La ilaha illallah.
One can never be too cautious.
Hey! Man, I'm really sorry. Can I get you another drink? Hey!
What up, player?
Man, you just got it all over my pants and my shoes, man. Man, I'm real sorry, man. Let me get you another cup. Man, I don't want another cup. You gotta watch where you're walking, man. Man, I'm sorry. I don't want any problems. I'm gonna get out of here, okay? Where you gonna go? Man, please get your hands off me. What you gonna do about it?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum. What does that mean? Peace be unto you. You will not find a group of people who are more inclined towards peace. Peace with their Creator, peace with themselves, peace with their surroundings, than those who follow that way of all the messengers of God, that way of submitting and surrendering yourself to the Creator and not His creation. Now we're going to be talking about a very important topic, like we always do. When somebody takes that first step and they acknowledge that there is a supreme Lord, a sovereign God that is ruling this universe, the Creator, and now they want to serve Him, they want to prostrate to Him, they want to worship Him alone. They take that necessary step, which is the Shahada, that first step. Many of us have come into this way of life consciously, but now what happens from here? What do you do from here? My next guest is going to help us tackle this topic. When we come back, my good friend Sheikh Yasser Qardi here on the Deen Show. We'll be right back.
Allah, there's only one God and Muhammad is His messenger. Allah, La ilaha illallah. Allah, there's only one God and Jesus was His messenger. Allah, La ilaha illallah.
I don't know why I did that. Maybe it's just to break the ice. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What did we just say?
We just said, may peace be unto you.
We have a lot of non-Muslims who are watching the show. Every Wednesday here in Chicago, if you're in Chicago, they catch us at 12 midnight. And those who aren't staying up that late, then the following day, 2 p.m.
MashaAllah.
They get to learn about what we just said, these little greetings. And the most important thing is the way of life that we're trying to present to all of mankind, which is that way of all the messengers, Islam. Yeah. So now there are many people who are coming to this beautiful way of life, the fastest growing way of life in the world today. But now they need some encouragement. What is the first step? Define it. When somebody enters Islam, they make that declaration that there's no deity worthy of worship except the Creator of the heavens and earth. And Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the last and final messenger, accepting Jesus, Moses, Abraham, and all the other messengers that preceded him. What do they do from here? Let's spend a minute talking about what this word, what this phrase means, and then let's go on to the most important thing after that, the prayer, the establishment of the prayer.
Okay. Well, one of the beautiful things about our religion of Islam is the emphasis on direct ritual and prayer to God directly. There is no intermediary, there are no superstitious rituals, no strange incantations. It's very simple and very clear. If a person wants to accept Islam, they don't need to go to a church or a mosque or a synagogue. They can do so in the privacy of their houses, even though of course it's encouraged to publicize the conversion, but the actual conversion is a declaration before you and God. It's a declaration from the one, basically in front of the one who created you. You simply testify and you acknowledge that this Creator is the only being and entity that is worthy of worship and veneration. It's that simple. And of course that testimony in Arabic is called a shahada, which basically translates as testimony. The very shahada means it's a testimony. I am testifying, I am bearing witness, I am certain that there is no God that is worthy of my worship other than the one true God. And in Arabic we call that God Allah. The Allah only means the true God. That's the meaning of Allah, is the God that is worthy of worship. So this testimony basically singles out that one entity for worship, and then we also testify that God has sent prophets and messengers, and that final prophet and messenger is our Prophet Muhammad. May God's peace and blessings be upon all the prophets. So after this testimony of faith, a person is a Muslim, whether he did so in front of 1 million people, 10 people, or no no person, if he did so in the privacy of his house, if he testified, I bear witness that there is no God other than that one true God, Allah, and that God has sent prophets and messengers, and the final prophet and messenger is the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon all of them, that is what makes a Muslim a Muslim.
Now, is Islam a new religion brought by Muhammad?
Islam is the primordial religion. It is the original religion. And the meaning of Islam is submission. So it might have been manifested in slightly different ways in terms of practice, in terms of prohibitions, in terms of what you can or can't eat, or how you dress, or what you are. But the basic teachings, and what we call theology, i.e. the belief in God, that does not change. So all the prophets came with the very same message, and that message was quite simple. Worship God, don't take any partners along with Him. That is the gist of Islam, and that gist has remained constant. It is eternal. Even before God created man, the same concepts were there, and that is that only He is worthy of worship. And even after there are no men on earth, those concepts will remain. So in that sense, Islam has been permanent. However, every prophet comes, and those prophets bring slightly different laws. The theology is the same, but laws can change from prophet to prophet. And this is, God takes circumstances and conditions and time and place into account. And so we do believe that prophets have come with slight variations in law, but not in theology. And so in that sense, Islam is slightly different from prophet to prophet, but that's only in legal sense, not in the theoretical or in the theological sense.
Okay, before we go on to that next pillar, that establishment of the prayer, we want to just talk about this a little bit more. What's prevalent in the world today is that people, they say, okay, yeah, I believe in God, I believe in the Creator, but then you mentioned something about a partner. What do you mean that you don't want to put, that is probably the most... that's the unforgivable sin, that if you die upon it, if you put a partner next to God, like what we see people praying through Jesus, for instance. What do we got to say about this?
Well, from the Muslim's perspective, there is only one God. And there are no partners, no entities that are worthy of any type of veneration or worship other than that true God. So Jesus Christ is a messenger of God. All of the prophets are messengers that God has sent. And these prophets, they might be the best human beings, but they don't impersonify God Himself. There is no element of divinity within them. So we believe that the greatest sin any human being can do is to deny this fact that only God is worthy of worship. And in fact, this is biblical teachings as well. The very first commandment is, you shall take no God other than the true God. This is the first biblical commandment as well, that you cannot worship any other God. And it is the same in our religion as well. The greatest sin, which is a greater sin than any sin you can do to a human being, is to transgress against God Himself. And to say to God, basically in action, if not in speech, that you're not worthy of worship, this dead person is worthy of worship, or this idol is worthy of worship. I'm going to dedicate the most precious thing that I have, and that is my humility, my humbleness, my sacrifice, my prayer. I'm going to dedicate that to an entity that doesn't deserve it. And I'm going to worship a being that you have created. This is an insult and an affront to God. And that is why God has said He will not forgive this sin. Anybody who does so, knowing that there's one true God, and he dedicates his life to another God, even if he believes in the true God, but his worship is dedicated to another God, then this is what we call in Arabic shirk, which means associating partners with God, and that's a type of polytheism. Now, problem comes when you say the word polytheism in the English language, the only thing that comes to mind is idol worship.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that comes to mind. But it's deeper than that. You don't have to have an idol to commit polytheism. You can, of course, have an idol and be polytheistic, but you can be polytheistic without an idol as well. If you pray to a saint, if you pray to a dead person, if you prostrate out of respect and humility and worship to another created object, if you sacrifice trying to please, like these pagan sacrifices, these ritual sacrifices. Now, we don't have human sacrifices in our religion, but we do sacrifice animals, right? We kill animals. Now, when we kill an animal, we're allowed to kill an animal because God has told us. So when we kill an animal, we ritually sacrifice a cow or a sheep to eat it. We have to mention the name of the Creator who created that animal, because that's the Creator that gave us that right to take that animal's life. Now, if a person mentions another God, person mentions another entity, that is dedicating a ritual to other than God, and that is polytheism. So let me define polytheism. Polytheism is to give the rights of Allah to other than Allah, to give the rights of God to other than God. Anything that is due to God, if you give it to other than God, you are being polytheistic.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned blood and you mentioned sacrifice just to emphasize this point. Now that blood, God doesn't need, because some people feel that, okay, God sent His Son to die for the sins of the world. That blood sacrifice, that animal is for now what? For the poor?
Yeah, this is a very, very different concept from Islam compared to other religions.
Yeah.
Many religions have this concept that you do need to sacrifice blood in order to, appease God. The Quran very clearly says, there's a verse in the Quran that clearly says, the blood and the meat does not reach God. God doesn't need this blood and the meat. Rather, what reaches God is your piety, is your dedication. Now, one of the ways to show dedication, especially more in the past, is to show that this animal, you will sacrifice it for the sake of God. Meaning, what does it mean in our religion? It means you dedicate that meat to the poor.
To the poor. Okay.
That's what it means.
Yeah.
Now, you've
God's
shown,
not hungry. He don't need this
doesn't
animal.
need that at all.
Okay.
What you've done is you've shown that you're willing to spend money to take something very precious, whether it's a cow or a sheep or a goat, and to use that money for people who need it, and that's the poor. That's what God likes. God doesn't need the blood and the meat. God wants to see your piety. And that piety is shown by mentioning His name and thanking Him, and then distributing that meat to the poor. And that is what we do every year on the day of sacrifices called Eid al-Adha. The grandest festival of the Muslims is on that day of sacrifice. And we're supposed to sacrifice an animal mentioning God's name, and we're supposed to give